Bill, reading 2 Timothy, you're tempting me just to go totally off script. Let's just sit there. I can think of no better passage on discipleship than Paul writing his last letter to his key man, Timothy. Thanks for the privilege of letting Ballard and I join you today. I think if we had zero speaking role, we'd be chomping at the bit to be here this morning. This feels in so many ways like coming home. I count it a real privilege to get to partner with this family here. So I am Andy Orr, my wife Ballard sitting back there holding one of our kids. We work with a Christian discipleship ministry called Oaks International. It's a relatively new ministry. We have a significant presence in the military, particularly in the Army, as well as a number of different colleges, and then some overseas work, so kind of 3 different missions within Oaks International. You can see the picture on the screen of my family. So my wife Ballard grew up right here in Blairsville, and then we have 6 children. So Eli is 13. Let's see if I get this. Micah is 11. Abraham is 7. Jesse is 6. Marilee is 2. I'm sure she is in there pushing the limits. And Peter is a 7-month-old. So if I fall asleep in the middle of the sermon today, you will understand why. So just to give you a little background of how we came to be where we are today. So I grew up in a family that exalted Christ and feared the Lord, and I'm so thankful for that. My father was led to Christ in the Air Force dormitories back in the 70s, and I grew up hearing the gospel just about every single day. And so then I went off to the United States Military Academy at West Point, where Jordan Allison, as many of you know, he was one of my classmates and a friend, and became a real good friend after we commissioned together. And during that time, I discovered that in the Army, I had one of 2 options. Either I would draw near to the Lord and he could tell me who I am, or I could let the Army tell me who I am. But those would be the only 2. There would be no kind of towing the line on this one. And so I discovered a group of men and women who are committed to studying the Bible, to making Christ known there at West Point. Kind of fell in love with that and determined, all right, wherever I go in the Army, that's going to be priority number 1. I want to find men and women who are eagerly pursuing the Lord. So got down to Fort Benning for our infantry training. Jordan and I were actually in the same platoon. And he and I, on Sunday mornings, we usually had the weekends off. So he and I would break off, and we had this deal with the chaplains. I don't know how we got this organized, but we had to deal with the chaplains and the drill sergeants for the basic trainees. After the Sunday morning chapel service, they could either come to Bible study or go clean the barracks. Those were their 2 choices. So you can imagine hundreds of soldiers ushering in, and that's kind of how I cut my teeth with trying to figure out how are we going to help soldiers get to know Jesus Christ, and discovering how complicated that was, and discovering what a broken background so many of our service members come from. When you ask them what the gospel is, they say, isn't that a radio station? There was little to no understanding of Christ, but that's where I determined, okay, wherever we go, we want to be a part of not just plugging in with Christ's people, but making him known. So went off to Fort Bragg, North Carolina for a few years. That's where I started to discover that in order to make him known, we were going to have to share life deeply with them. We could teach from a platform, and we do, and we love that. But to see that transformation, we were going to need to get involved in one another's lives. So we were about 2 months married. Ballard doesn't remember this story, but it sticks out so clearly to me. About 2 months married, living in this tiny apartment, and I came to Ballard and I said, hey, let's go all in. Let's open our home. Let's figure out a way to just invest in the lives of soldiers. And she, rather than, what do you mean invest? Like, we don't have much of a home. Instead, she said, let's do it. How do we do that? I said, I don't know. Let's start praying. And sure enough, God started bringing hungry men and women into our lives, wanting to grow. And so we determined that wherever we go, let's just ask God, not for a ministry, let's ask God for a man. Let's ask God for a woman. And then when he gives us one, we pray, God, how about one more? How about one more? How about one more? As we seek to invest in them. From there, while there, went off to Afghanistan. That was incredibly developmental in my walk with Christ. One of my favorite stories is that me and a couple of my NCOs would go to the artillery bunker when we weren't on patrol. We'd go to the artillery bunker because it was the only cool, quiet place we could find. And we'd do our morning quiet times and read and discuss it. But every once in a while, the Taliban would shoot something in, and the entire platoon would join us for our morning quiet times. So that was always a highlight for us. And kind of moved around the world after that with the Army. After 8 years of active duty, we left the Army, moved the family back to Fort Bragg to come on staff with the Christian ministry there. And then about 2 years ago, well, I guess 2.5 or so, started getting a little restless, thinking, all right, God's really done a work here at Fort Bragg. There's a strong team of leaders and staff that are here. We think this is going to keep going. What else in the Army, though, is unengaged with a ministry like this one? And so started praying about that. Ballard said, let's go wherever it's not hot. So we moved to El Paso. And wanted to see, God, what are you up to there? And we went in without a 5-step plan of here's how you generate ministry in the Army. I don't have that. I've yet to find that. If you have that, let me know. Instead, we went in and we walked around praying and praying and praying that God would open up doors for us. And by his grace, day one, he started giving us opportunities, whether it was connection with chaplains. One of the chaplains, I'll share about this in a little bit, put us in a... It's a bar. It has a back room. It's on post. It has a back room with tables and chairs, and said, "Here, start recruiting soldiers here." And so we would go there and sing hymns together, and someone would read through the scripture, give a teaching, and then we'd break out into small groups and wrestle through. So God just opened door after door after door. I'll tell you a little bit more as we go about what the ministry is going. I do find that I have a knack for answering questions that people aren't asking. So I'm going to try pretty diligently to save a good bit of this. It's meant to be Sunday school. You don't need another lecture. So I'm going to try and save some of this to be a Q&A near the end. If you'd hit the slide for me. Thanks. Yeah, so the mission of Oaks International is to proclaim Christ and multiply disciple makers for the glory of God and joy of all nations. You can see some of the men and women from our ministry there. That's in a chapel on Fort Bliss. Fort Bliss is the home to America's tank division, the 1st Armored Division, pretty history division from World War II. It has an incredibly high operations tempo. Either you are deployed overseas, you are resetting, fixing everything you broke while you were deployed, or training up to deploy overseas. So it's kind of a go, 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 go. So roughly 30,000 active duty service members there at Fort Bliss, mostly U.S. Army, but a small contingent of others. It's located right in the heart of El Paso, right on the border. From our house, we look north, we see New Mexico. We look south, we see Mexico, and we look east, and there's Fort Bliss. So we're tucked right there on the border of Texas. And today I kind of want to share just a few stories from this mission statement. After the Army, I was so burnt out on PowerPoints. This will not be a robust PowerPoint, but I do like pictures. Infantrymen, right? Enjoy the simple things. So I'll show us a few pictures and talk about that as we go. If I could see the next slide, please. So the first part of our mission is to proclaim Christ. Our message is simple. Jesus is Lord. Everything stands or falls on that one statement. We do not want to be the people known as the scripture memory people, although we emphasize that, or the quiet time people, though we emphasize that, or the people of prayer. Those are all good. Or those weird people who gather in the chapel and we're not really sure what we do. That one's not as good, but still probably claimed of us. What we really want to be is the people who are just obsessed with Jesus, who he is what we talk about, and everything else falls into place as we walk with him. 1 Corinthians 2:2, of course, I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. So we do that by proclaiming Jesus among the lost, We have a variety of ways that we try and engage with the lost. Sometimes as simple as walking around, talking to strangers. One of the guys, I'll highlight him in there at some point, but he's there. His name's Pablo. He's one of the military age personnel in that photo. He was just sitting there one day, and I thought, man, I'm going to go. This guy's totally by himself. He's probably on his phone or something. I'm going to go chat with him. And his eyes lit up, and he said, I was just praying that God would send something. I'm brand new to the Army, and I was literally praying before you walked up. I said, hey, let's talk. And Pablo's been a strong part of our ministry in helping to lead it. Oftentimes, we organize the outreaches in the dining facilities. Think of a large cafeteria for soldiers. There's a number of them on Fort Bliss. About each brigade gets their own dining facility on average. And so we work with the chaplains to go in there. One of my buddies thought this up because he was sick of trying to figure out how to provide dinner for these soldiers. And he said, hey, the dinner's already there. Why don't we just ask the dining facility and the chaplains for a chunk of the dining, the area, and we'll go and we'll walk around, and we just walk around from table to table and say, we're going to read the Bible over there and ask a few questions about Jesus and have a discussion. Would you like to come join us? And for the most part, it's no, absolutely not. Please stop bugging me. Whatever, you know, we get all of it. I usually bring one or two of my boys with me so they get to see Dad get rejected. But then every once in a while, someone will say, and it's always the question, like they'll say, like right now. It's like, yeah, like right now. We're gonna get started in 5 minutes if you want to go eat over there. And they'll grab their tray. Or my favorite one is, I've seen this now numerous times. One soldier will say to another, hey, I'll go if you go. All right, like they're jumping off a cliff or something, you know. And so we get to go and meet with soldiers. That's that top left photo. You can see that the guy in that picture, his name's Lemmy, grew up in China. He's now part of the U.S. Army, American citizen now. And he's saying, I didn't think there was anyone in the Army who knew the Lord. I didn't think there was going to be anything. I thought this was just going to be a spiritual wasteland. And so that sort of story keeps us encouraged and keeps us going. And the reality is, I actually don't lead many of those DFAC studies. I get to go each time. And but from day one, I'm asking, who else can lead this? I'll give you some questions. You discuss it. I'll kind of listen in. There's like some heresy that comes up. We'll work on that. But this is a great chance for them to cut their teeth, reading a story from the Gospels and asking questions. And you'd be amazed at the questions that then come back to us. That circle of tables in the bottom left, so that is how at the pub that I was telling you about. And this has me really excited. That was shut down. There was a chaplain. I won't say any names. I love our chaplains. Like, we have some amazing ones. But for some reason, he told me very straight up, I am not a fan of what is going on in that dining facility. I thought, what's going on? How can we fix this? And just praying, you know, there's no chapel, there's no presence out in that part of Fort Bliss. It is a ghost town. And just trying to figure that out. Well, I just got word while on this trip, the commanding general himself, so 2-star general at Fort Bliss, came to the chaplains and said, what on earth are you doing? Why aren't we back at that part of post? Get something going. So I immediately got a text like, hey, are you still interested in going to that part of post? We've just been ordered. So it does not matter how the chaplains feel about it. That is a Roger, yes, sir. And so we're going to go sit down and pray over that when I get back next week, Lord willing. And then in the bottom right, you can see a photo of, it's called our reception barracks. So I get to take a couple of the boys there each week. So every soldier who in processes through Fort Bliss has to go through the reception barracks, and they spend about a week there. I mean, even it doesn't matter your rank. Now, officers don't have to live in the barracks, but you have to go through, and that's where you get your gear issued, and you sit through briefings before then they funnel you out to your unit. So it's a great place. Again, the commanding general said, hey, why aren't we inviting soldiers to Bible studies and chapel services right when they get here? And he said that to one of my chaplain friends. He turned to me and said, Andy, why aren't we? Roger, got it. So each week I bring a few boxes of pizza up there. We get to know the soldiers. We get to see what their interest is. My job, why I'm told to be there, my official responsibility is to invite them to chapel and Bible studies and welcome them to Fort Bliss. But the good news is, after I do that, they usually stand around for a while because they're not really sure what to do. And so it almost always means we get to actually lay out the gospel for them. Just and usually that starts in the form of a question. Hey, what do you think the Bible's all about? What's kind of the big story? And that starts a question. We get to lay out the gospel for them. The other day we were doing that, and I'll speak anywhere from 15 to 40 soldiers at this, and so each week, which is really encouraging. But the reality is, most of them, there's not a lot of interest. But a guy comes out. I says, "Hey, do you want free pizza?" And he steps out of what's called the day room holding his Bible. And he says, "Yes, I do." I said, "Well, this is a good sign." I said, "Hey, man, we have a Bible study tonight. Do you want to get in the car and go with me?" You're like, "No." And he walks off. Man, come on. But then he comes back 5 minutes later and starts to talk to a buddy of mine. And I don't know what that buddy said, but he is now this new soldier is now one of the most involved in our ministries. I'm getting texts from him regularly asking for ways to serve. He is actually from Micronesia. Again, now we have quite a large contingency of foreign soldiers who join the U.S. Army for various reasons. It is a way that they can get their citizenship. And he's, everything we do, even if we're not doing anything, he's asking me what's going on. And so incredibly encouraged by that. We also want to continue to proclaim Christ amongst the saved. That never goes away. Right? We are going to be proclaiming Christ through all eternity. There is not yes, we proclaim Christ, we get into the kingdom, and then discipleship starts. No, we proclaim Christ day in and day out. I need it. These soldiers need it. We need it. So we do that in chapels. We do that in our home. You can see a picture of us at Thanksgiving this year. We do that on Sunday mornings. We get to do that and go meet soldiers. We get to go out and meet them one-on-one. Our goal, everywhere we go, we want Christ to be the focus of all that we are doing. I love 2 Corinthians 4:5. What we proclaim is not ourselves, but Jesus Christ is Lord. Ourselves as your servants for Jesus' sake. He needs to get all the glory. Well, all right. If you'll hit the slide. The second part of our task is to multiply disciple makers. That comes from a deeply rooted conviction of ours that if one is called to be a disciple, one is also commanded to be a disciple maker. The Great Commission is self-replicating. If we're to make disciples, baptize them, and teach them to obey everything that Jesus commanded, well, that's a command. So we have to teach the next generation to make disciples, baptize, and obey everything Jesus commanded. And they have to teach the next, and they have to. It is self-replicating. So that is a kind of a drumbeat of ours, is come join the Lord in the work that he's doing. In 2 Corinthians as well. I'm teaching on 2 Corinthians, so it's heavy on my mind right now. He talks about death being at work in Paul and his team, that life might be at work in the next generation. So that's our invitation. Will you let death be at work in you, that life might be at work in the next generation? I talked to you about the importance of sharing life with those who were discipled. This becomes all the more true when we're trying to train them to be disciple makers. You've often heard it said that more is caught than taught. And we've determined there's kind of two requirements in that. First, they have to want it. I am really bad. Well, actually, I'm probably pretty good at coercing people, but it gets really bad fruit, shaming people into this. I honestly, when you find someone who wants to be a disciple maker, then it's like instead of pushing them out the door, you're just having to tell them when to take a knee. Hey, you need a break, man. You see a couple up there, Zach and Angela. He's in uniform. I got to go to his promotion ceremony. She's in uniform as well. That's our daughter, not theirs. But they just did have their first baby, and we were celebrating that. I told him, hey, relax, rest. We put a meal, well, I didn't. My wife does all the real heavy lifting. Put a meal train together, all of these things. But after a few weeks, finally, they reached out and they said, we're really bored. Can we come back to Bible study? And they're leaders in our Bible study. It was like, oh man, no, we just didn't want to pressure you. We do not want you guys to burn out. And so sure enough, there with a screaming baby and all of that, there's just a drive in them. They're not doing this because we've pressured them to. We're doing this because God has their heart. And the second requirement that we're looking for with a disciple maker is that need to share life on life. At the end of his life, Paul tells Timothy, you, however, have followed my teaching, my conduct, my aim in life, my faith, my patience, my love, my steadfastness, my persecutions and sufferings. He says, in Timothy, I found a man who shared his life with mine. And Paul didn't need to drag him into that. Timothy was bought in from when they met at Lystra and went where Paul went. They shared life together. He would send Timothy out. Sometimes Paul would get arrested. They'd have times of separation, but they were overlapping life that the next generation might be raised up. In fact, we are a result of that. We didn't just one day appear out of nowhere. We are in a long line of generations that have trained up the next generation. Yeah, Paul tells the Thessalonians, this isn't just that one-on-one relationship, but even with communities. So being affectionately desirous of you, we are ready to share with you not only the gospel of God, but also our own selves, because you'd become very dear to us. Paul has this longing that God has put in him to be with the people that he is investing his life into. You can see on the left there a picture of a photo. This was last week at a wedding. It's kind of why we're doing this East Coast trip. One of the guys who's been leading in our ministry, both at Fort Bragg and out Fort Bliss for the last 6 years, or no, 7 or 8. Anyways, he got married, so we flew the family out there. And while at that wedding, that picture right there, every one of those men have lived in our home for an extended period of time over the years. And it seems so slow. It seems so inefficient. There's even been conflict peppered throughout it, and yet every one of those men is now in a different context making disciples. So a few are still active duty, and wherever the Lord has sent them, they are making disciples. They're involved deeply in churches, and what are they doing there? They're recruiting other young adults into their lives and investing deeply in them. They're scattered throughout the nation. Some are in the civilian sector. Some are probably going to be in the military now for a long time. And that did my heart so good, just to see, God, we didn't do any of that. We got to be a part of what you were doing. But it seems like Jesus' method works. You invest deeply in a few, God transforms their lives, and then wherever they go, they can't but help fish for men, and that is God's work in them. Like that is nothing. That is nothing that we have done, but God's allowed us to be a part of their lives, and to keep them encouraged. All right, I'll wrap up here shortly for the Q&A, but if you could hit that next slide. And finally, why are we doing this? So our mission is to proclaim Christ, multiply disciple makers for the glory of God and the joy of all nations. I actually don't feel like I need to explain that a whole lot at Redeemer. I think we know the chief end of man. I think we know where that lines up. That, man, all of this is because God deserves the glory due his name. So we want more and more and more for our God to be big in our minds, everything else to be small. That has got to be the focus. I'm so easily distracted about that next exciting thing, that next discipleship program, that next Bible study, that next method. Those aren't bad. I'm going to keep getting excited about those. But man, they've got to be nested under the glory of God. And what a joy it is to see when that starts to click in that next man, that God actually is interested in my joy. When that next woman sees, God actually cares about my happiness more than I care about my happiness, and I can walk with him. And then we want to see that to all nations. I think if we have a smaller vision than that, first and foremost, it's smaller than Christ's vision, so we have no excuse for that. But second, we start to become more and more and more inwardly focused instead of focused on pouring out our lives for others. So we do that. That picture on the left is me in India taking a group there. Ethan, the one with the beard on the far left, is one of the leaders. He's lived with us for a long time. He now is running a guy's pad at Fort Bliss. He actually, Truth in Lending, runs our ministry while working a 40-hour-a-week job. I just try not get in his way. I'm coaching him right now as he then prepares, Lord willing, in maybe the next year or so to launch overseas into a Muslim context. So we try and beat that drum perpetually. Anything short of all nations is too small for the Lord. And then we see the first step of that after Fort Bliss is the army. That's a beautiful thing and a challenge that we face, is that soldiers typically only have 2 to 4 years with us. That's like a max. That's if we meet them day one. That's about as long as we're going to get with them. The army is going to send them elsewhere. And that picture in the bottom right does me good. All 4 of those soldiers came to us from Other Oaks ministries from throughout the army. And we send people to Other Oaks ministries throughout the army. Nearly every army installation with a division or higher, which is what most soldiers are going to spend their careers at, has a disciple-making ministry that we can get them involved in. And those men running that ministry are some of my closest friends, so I get to hand them off. So it really is a joy to see the gospel advancing, not just in our little corner of the world, but to see it advancing through the army and to the nations. I'll leave us with a key promise before I open up one that for questions, but one that just keeps us going on those tough days, on those days where we're really questioning what are we doing here, what is going on. It's not all I like to tell all the highlight stories, right? But there are challenging days out there. We don't look to fall back on a pep talk. We look to fall back on promises instead. In Isaiah 43, 5-7, I know many of you know this. Fear not, for I am with you. I will bring your offspring from the east and from the west. I will gather you. I will say to the north, give up, and to the south, do not withhold. Bring my sons from afar, my daughters from the ends of the earth. Everyone who is called by my name, whom I created for my glory. This is God's plan. He's going to do it with or without us, and we count it a privilege to get to join him in that. All right. I've talked a lot, and I'm going to talk a lot more later. So what are your questions? No, that's a good question. Yes, that's not a normal thing, right? Yeah, absolutely. They are in the army, so they do all have, it's not because they're homeless. They do, in fact, have a place to stay. So what we're looking for in sharing life for one another, so I think on Mark 3:14, where it says, Jesus appointed 12, and we named apostles that they might be with him, and he might send them out to preach. And so we are looking to invite those who are looking to be disciple makers to come and be with us, to learn from us together. We found that overlapping life in that way is a really effective way. Typically, if someone comes to live with us, when it's not indefinite, we're looking for typically 9 months to a year or so to help them really provide some structure, to help them do ministry in our home and on Fort Bliss or on Fort Bragg, where we came from, so that they can be equipped. We don't have anyone living with us right now. A couple guys moved out. I don't know, a number of months ago. So it's been kind of a nice season. I have an office, which is nice. But yeah, we are always looking for, God, would you have us to invite some in deeply? We can only do that with obviously a very few. So we try and be quite selective of that. It's neat to see them invest in our kids and serve around the house. And yeah, and they look up to Ballard as a mom. Very good question. What else? Sir?
Probably not too far distance past, we sometimes hear stories of chaplains that have a lot of challenges, even in, restrictions for being too open with the gospel or whatever. But that dynamic sort of changed in recent years.
My limited perception is that it has. The chaplains, they the Secretary of War took the Army's spiritual fitness guide and said, effective immediately, this is no more. He wanted nothing, which was good, frankly. And he says, the chaplains, you are there to actually provide religious support, not just mental health care. And so that could be a double-edged sword, right? Because we have Hindu chaplains, we have Muslim chaplains, but by God's grace, and especially at Fort Bliss, we have some chaplains who love the Lord, who see first and foremost that they are his and they want to make him known. And so there are some restrictions still. A chaplain, for example, I have the freedom, whether in my civilian capacity or in my Army Reserve capacity, I can talk to anyone about Jesus. I don't need permission. It doesn't matter their rank. It doesn't matter if they work for me, they report to me, or I report to them. There are no restrictions. The only restriction would be that I can't use my rank to coerce people. I can't say like, hey, if you come to Bible study, you don't have to do PT tomorrow. But I am totally free. The chaplains do face a number of restrictions in that. The creative ones, by God's grace, figure out a way to get the gospel out there, though. So I consider that a very sweet partnership. Everything we do on Fort Bliss, we do by, through, and with chaplains. So that is key. And they see us as their discipleship arm, as their evangelism arm, and they've really put a lot of trust in us during this season. That could change. We've seen that change over different seasons. Every 3 years, a whole new batch of chaplains is coming out. So that could all change, but right now it has just been my closest friends there are chaplains, and so it really has been a sweet partnership.
Do some of these soldiers, do they get plugged into local churches there in El Paso? How is the local church scene? Are there some solid ministries there?
Yeah, great question. So when someone comes around, we know a number of the different local churches and trust a number of the different local churches. And so I ask them what they're looking for and give them some options, whether that's going down the street to Coronado Baptist Church, there's the Sovereign Grace Church, the local PCA church, whatever that may be. So we have relations there. And so a number of the soldiers are involved in those different churches. So that means that our ministry then is coming alongside those churches and trying to equip them. But we do operate primarily out of a chapel. Yes, Granddad. On Sundays, we're in the chapel, which right now that's a great fit because it is a gospel-centered. I legitimately look forward to the weeks that we're not in childcare, doing the Sunday school. Those are good too. Praise God for the children. But I legitimately look forward. That is one of the highlights of my week, is getting to that chapel. That could change in future years. Right now, it is kind of, if a soldier's looking for Christ, they may just stumble into the chapel. So it's a way to meet soldiers, hungry soldiers. It's a way to partner with the chaplains. And frankly, it's a way for my family and us to be shepherded and fed. If that changes with the chaplains, again, and my friend in DC, the head chaplain there at the chapel he was in was replaced by Unitarian. So what do you know? They're heavily involved and plugged into an off-post church, and that's what they needed to do in that season. Yeah. Good. Sir. Yeah, it's kind of the art side and the science of discipleship. The art being, what is the need of the hour? Jesus talks about the faithful servant who gives the other servants the food at the proper time. What is the food they need? That's a good question. An overarching framework that I personally find very helpful is the idea of evangelize, establish, equip, send. So evangelism, my desire is that they would believe God. Establishing, my desire is that they would know their God. They would learn to walk with him. That's going to be a lot of the spiritual disciplines. Equip, rather. We want to equip you with tools to go out and disciple the next generations, and then send you on your way and keep you encouraged as you launch. It's so kind of a painting with very broad strokes. That's what we would use.
Do you think that disciple making is something that you need to do in ministry, or do you think that the church should be engaging in disciple making as well? Like, do you think is the way that you guys do it unique to your ministry, or do you think local churches should be taking a similar approach to the way that they help encourage members to do disciple making?
Yeah, it's a good question. In terms of the approach, I think that's going to look different in different contexts. In terms of the principles, like I said, I think if you're called to be a disciple, you're called to be a disciple maker. The church is a family, therefore, of disciples coming together, and so we need to equip one another to make disciples. I think Pastor Bill would be the first to tell you his job is to equip the saints for the work of the ministry, according to Ephesians 4. So yeah, very good question. We don't think what we're doing is special. Sorry, we think it's special. Last question. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So obviously, kind of unspoken in that is we are looking for people who we trust deeply, so we get to know their lives deeply. But in that, they disciple our children. They will. In fact, at the wedding we were just at, their eyes lit up when I told them some of the men that were going to be there, and they'll take them out occasionally for, well, not coffee. Take them out for a soda, read a passage of scripture with them, wrestle through it. And so that has been huge. And the kids are involved in our ministry as much as we can. We don't want to have family time and ministry time. Obviously, we do need to prioritize at times time focused on just the family, just us. We try and do that on Mondays. But we try and overlap as much as possible. How can we be a family on mission? So there are a few events that I do where I don't take at least one kid with me in tow, and I kind of rotate through that. Say the words, Andy. No, thank you, Rachel. Thank you. Yeah, it really is a privilege. Well, thanks again for letting us come. We feel like family here, so this means a lot to us.